Imagine a world where meat and food production are drastically reduced. The US and 12 other countries have signed an agreement aimed at cutting methane emissions for agriculture to combat climate change. Key countries like Australia, Brazil, and the US are involved, potentially causing a massive global food crisis. Leaders argue that cutting animal farming will help cool the planet, but without farms, how will we eat? Insects as a new protein source? Is this the future of food? What do you think about eating bugs to save the planet? I'm sure it doesn't taste good or sound good. Let's talk about this. All right, so I want to take a quick minute and share some thoughts around an article I just came across that I thought so definitely worth bringing to your attention just because it has more to do with the current conditions that the world is being forced to live under, and has a lot to do with our food and just the overall stability of our systems in general. And so I came across an article talking about the 13 countries that are deliberately working to create a global famine. And so we've covered the need to have preparations as far as food. But then again, when you have 13 countries, which will probably be more in very short order of time, it's going to be hard to actually prepare for food outside of having something in the short term. But yet, how do you prepare for something that is going to be a permanent and systemic event in reference to like distribution as well as just the food production in general being altered drastically, meaning that you can probably have 4, 5, 6 months worth of food on deck. But what about year 1, year 2, year 3? And then again, I can understand people say, have your own garden, have your own, production of farms, get close with people in your area that does farming and things of that nature. And granted, that is an ideal thing to do. But then also, mind you, each state in these countries will be forced to act some type of policy that will more than likely hinder local farmers' ability to actually be able to sustain operations, meaning they're going to have to shut down or minimize order or literally just do the bare minimum to feed their own household and not be able to produce mass, productions of different types of products or whatnot. And so it just leads me to wonder, beyond all the things we're hearing now, what will future food production look like in general, whether it be just on a personal note, locally or nationally. And so real quick, I want to jump in and just share this article here, and I'll link it down below because this is something that's worth thinking about, nothing worth panicking about, just take it for what it is. There's always time between now and the accomplishment of this to try to thwart their plans, but it's something worth knowing for those who may not want to believe me. Just take a look and just do your own research and find out, what nations are all dialed into that build back better model. And of course, I even see some articles where people talking about, the white hats are winning. Come on now, this is, a global event here, not just an isolated event here in the US with our own government. We have governments worldwide working towards this type of agenda. But let me just share this with you. I'm going to just read through it just because it's better to give you what's written in front of you rather than try to summarize it and put it in my own words. So real quick here, it says, these 13 countries just signed an agreement to engineer a global famine by destroying food. And so this came out Natural News here on the 20th from Ethan Huff, and it's got about 10,000 views thus far. But this is a reprint from another media source. I think it's Global Research. And so real quick here, just give you an idea what's going on. It says the United States and the following 12 countries have all signed onto an agreement that in practice will destroy agriculture worldwide while ushering in a global famine and starvation. Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Burkina Faso. And that's something that it's just one of the things where I see it. But then again, when I see Burkina Faso, based upon things we talked about before, where their government is out, booting out the French and everything else and trying to bring things back within their own government, and actually get back to the grass tacks of using their own resources, it's one of the things that, I could find hard to believe. But then again, it is what it is. But it says Chile, Czech Republic, Ecuador, Germany, Panama, Peru, Spain, and Uruguay, as of now, have signed on to an agreement. Okay, what does that agreement talk about? It says a loss of meat production from Australia, Brazil, and the U.S. alone will be enough to starve countless people, not to mention all the other foods that are raised and grown in these 3 countries. It says, citing climate change and global warming as the reason why such drastic measures must be taken, the globalists behind the climate scam are pushing the notion that agriculture, including animal rearing, must end in order to prevent animal flatulence from heating the environment. So literally, animals letting out their rear end is enough to cause a planet to warm up. Come on now. But anyway, it says, quote, I am glad to see the shared commitment by the international community to mitigate methane emissions from the agriculture as a means to achieve the goals we signed for in the Paris Agreement on Climate, said Luis Planas, Spanish Minister of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Food in a statement. So literally, this Paris Agreement on Climate, the fine print in there that the U.S. Biden signed onto, this is in the fine print, or right in front. Not sure. I didn't get a chance to read the Paris Agreement. But it says, Marcino Mina, CEO of the Global Methane Hub of course, agrees, says food systems are responsible for 60% of methane emissions, Mena explained in an announcement. Then he goes on to say, without farms, there's no food. Says over the weekend, Vice President Kamala Harris made a statement of her own calling for a reduced population that can be accomplished in part through the destruction of the global food supply. Okay. Then it goes on to talk about the latest version of the global warming narrative is that food itself causes it. Apparently, the entire world must go back to a hunter-gatherer society with very few actual remaining in order for the planet to cool itself down and return to normal. But it says here, mitigating methane is the fastest way to reduce warming in the short term, claims former presidential wannabe John Kerry. We know he's a climate czar that Biden appointed, who continues to be one of the loudest purveyors of global warming propaganda. Then it goes on to say, food and agriculture can contribute to a low methane future by improving farmer productivity and resilience. We welcome agricultural ministers participating in the implementation of the global methane pledge is. I just Google search that real quick and it'll pop right up and it says global methane pledge right on the screen here. Let me minimize myself so you can see what I see. But this is John Kerry, our energy czar. It says, fast action on methane to keep a 1.5 degrees Celsius future within reach. So literally, these people think they can play God according to their own agenda to cool the earth when, as I mentioned, seasonal cycles are natural. And let's not mention the final season that we're going to experience on this earth really heated up. You know what I'm talking about for my Bible believers. So yeah, this is just some things here, but they actually go through a lot to make sure that they're trying to get their agenda accomplished. And so here is a list of countries that pledged for this carbon emissions methane situation: Canada, US, Mexico, all the way through. So Venezuela has not. It looks like El Salvador has not. Bolivia, Paraguay, we got Algeria, we got Belarus, Russia, China. So as of now, they haven't signed on, but you can see the list here of these countries that are all signed to the agenda. And then these more countries. So these are all the countries that literally have an agenda to cool the earth. And the champions of this agenda is these 7 nations right here. So this is just a little something we're paying attention to. But last, it says here, part of the global methane pledge, by the way, involving transitioning the world from eating real foods like beef and chicken to instead cooking crickets and insect larvae, which are toxic and non-nutritious to humans. It says you can clearly see with the ongoing inflationary trend, which appears to be a hyperinflation in slow motion, we are reaching a point where meat and food in general will become so unaffordable for the average person that many will have no choice but to try bugs, assuming they want to continue living in such a world. Yeah, so, just reading what's before me so you can see what is being planned. And then last, it says we can presume from this language that among the practices being considered after are replacing a major portion of the beef and dairy cattle, pork and chicken stocks that populations rely on for protein with insects, larvae, mealworms, crickets, etc., says journalist Leo Holman about what the global methane pledge entails. So literally, if you look within that global methane pledge, clearly the solution to their problem that they are trying to force the world to listen to and abide by, the solution is bugs. In the last paragraph, it says the UN, World Economic Forum, and the NGOs have been promoting meatless diets as a consumption of insect protein for years, and billionaires have invested in massive insect facilities being built in the state of Illinois, Chicago, and the Netherlands, where mealworms, crickets, and other bugs will be processed as additives to be inserted to the food supply, often without clear labels that will inform people of exactly what they're eating. And so, are we surprised that our leaders want to murder us by destroying the food supply? And that's the end of the article. But sweet and simple, straight to the point, you see what's going on. And just this article here with this carbon methane pledge lets us know what the future they're trying to build for us. And once again, not trying to scare you, but just inform you as to what's going on so you know what's really at stake here, the stability of our food system and everything in between. So with that being the case, what do? Do the best you can with this knowledge here, educate others, and make preparations, and ideally learning additional skills on how to live off the land. Whether it means, plucking a tree for berries and fruits and growing whatever you can, but realize there's going to be pressure because at some point down the line, they're going to say, people who grow gardens, is a threat to whatever they want to come up with. So just put some thoughts before you. Share this article. Curious to hear your thoughts on this. Clearly, there's value here. Take this article or this video, share it so more people can find out what's going on. Hit the thumbs up button on the way out, and make sure you hit the check mark and the bell notification so you're notified. And other than that, catch you later.